The visit to Prague lasted a whole month, and the return was fixed for the beginning of July. Most of the archdukes had already departed, but audiences still had to be given to the entire Austrian court. Napoleon admitted having satiated everyone who approached him with diamonds. The presents from Marie-Louise were not less valuable. Most of them appeared under 125,000 francs, charged in the Grand Chamberlain's account. In addition, she had emptied her own purse. "I have nothing left for private expenses," she wrote to Madame de Lucy. "I have been obliged to give away a great deal in Prague, but shall economize next month so as not to be in arrears." On July 1st, at 7 in the morning, Marie-Louise departed with her father, her stepmother, and her sisters, accompanied her to the carriage, and the procession set out amid the ringing of bells, while troops lined the route. It rained all day, and they were obliged to postpone their visit to the gardens of Count Czernin at Schönhof. They slept at Carlsbad, where they halted to look at the curiosities, and on the 4th at Schönfeld they descended the tin mines. On the 5th, the night was spent at Franzbrück, near Egra, where on the morning of the 6th the Emperor took leave of his daughter. By midnight of the same day, after traveling over shocking roads, Marie-Louise reached Bamberg, where the Duke of Bavaria, Berthier's father-in-law, paid his respects to her. The Duke, surrounded by all the members of the Bavarian government, had been waiting at the foot of the staircase of his palace. That tragic palace, since 6 in the evening, the hour appointed, but at 1 in the morning he had the honor of dining with Her Majesty. On the 7th, Marie-Louise was at Würzburg, where she found her uncle, who had been her devoted companion from Dresden, and had only preceded her for the final preparations. Marie-Louise remained with him a whole week, which passed off very happily. She spent her time in sylvan excursions, picnics, and concerts, in which the Grand Duke exhibited all his talents as cantor of the cathedral. Marie-Louise was full of fancies, as her letter of July 9th shows. "My health is very good, notwithstanding a sharp pain in the stomach yesterday. Again on the 10th, I have great pain in one arm and am packed up with plasters which do not sweeten the air of my room. The plasters must have been efficacious, for on the same day she went riding, held a reception, and was present at 2 acts of Le Mariage de Figaro. On the 14th she decided to leave and traveled in one day from Würzburg to Mayence. On the 15th, she left Mayence, traveling day and night, and arrived at 5 in the morning at the Château de Pange, where Monsieur de Pange, her chamberlain, entertained her with the most lavish and well-arranged hospitality. On the 17th, she passed through Metz and slept at Chalon. On the 18th, at 7 in the evening, the cannons of the Invalides announced to the Parisians that the Empress had returned to St. Cloud. From May 9th to July 18th, 2 whole months. Can we say that anyone noticed her absence? Chapter 8. Journey to Mayence, 1812 to 1813. The existence led by the Empress from July 18th, the day of her return, to December 18th, when the Emperor arrived unexpectedly, was the most monotonous and uneventful conceivable. She was very lonely, almost entirely tete-a-tete with Madame de Montebello and Monsieur Corvisart. Everything relating to ceremonial bored her, so that even when convened by the Grand Chamberlain, the Grand Officers were not sure of a reception. Thus, on the 19th, when they presented themselves to offer congratulations on the journey, the Empress pleaded fatigue and refused to receive anyone. Nevertheless, according to the orders left by the Emperor, the Empress usually attended the theater in state on Thursdays, and on Sundays Mass, followed by a reception and diplomatic audience. On these occasions she did her best, but with little success. She endeavored on August 15th to carry out the program planned by the Emperor, an account of which was given him each day. As the receptions became more restricted and less frequented, she felt more at ease, for the same faces reappeared each time, and she became familiar with these people. She does the honors which grace and simplicity. She plays billiards with the persons she selects, and the evening terminates with a concert or a play when still fewer people came. Some of them were astonished at her singular taste for coarseness in conversation, but this was quite usual in the intimate circle of Madame de Montebello, despite the attacks of fever of which she had at least one every 3 days, and which she could only shake off by distracting herself with long expeditions in the woods of St. Cloud, or it may be in consequence thereof, she constantly thought of the emperor. Without doubting his success, she felt his absence, and in order to afford herself some distraction, she had bracelets made, which she could wear constantly on her arms, inscribed with such names and dates as were connected with the most important periods in her life. It was not easy to decipher this enigma in colored stones, but it read as follows. She spelled Napoleon and Marie Louise in stones. This reads, Napoleon 15th, August 1769, Marie 12th, December 1791, 27 Mars, the 2nd of April, 1810. So she occupied herself ignoring everything concerning France, even when disaster was threatened. On the day when, in a fit of delirium, the before-mentioned General Malay escaped from the Maison de Santé, in which he was confined, to the Place Vendôme, it was described to her as an outbreak of brigands, which was immediately put down, which had occurred during the night in Paris. She took no notice, but remarked to Cambacérès, "What could they have done to me?" To which he did not reply. She sought distraction at a party at St. Leu and another maison, after which she visited the salon. She wrote, "I'm not at all alarmed by the trouble incited by a handful of lunatics, for I know too well the good disposition of the people and their devotion to the emperor." She attended the theater, where Savary filled up a few boxes and seated some of his people in the audience to provide sufficient enthusiasm. In time, even her retinue became slack and found excuses for absenting themselves, until eventually, out of her whole suite, one single lady only remained. As for the gentlemen, their habit was to gamble from morning to night in the salon de service, and the single lady in waiting was fortunate if they did not propose she should amuse herself for a while at Chant-et-Quarante. Nevertheless, the winter sojourn in St. Cloud was a penance. On December 17th, the Moniteur published the 29th Bulletin, which exploded silently, but its effects disintegrated everything. The edifice was shaken. Everyone anticipated its fall. On the 18th, at 11:30 in the evening, as the Empress had just gone to bed and the Red Lady in waiting was about to close the doors and retire, she heard a noise in the adjacent salon. Naturally, after the episode of Malay, she imagined assassins. At the same moment, the door opened and two men enveloped in fur pelisses deliberately entered. Mademoiselle Katnisser, shrieking, freaked out, endeavoring to bar the entrance to the bedchamber, but one of the men threw aside his cloak and revealed the emperor. The Austrian alliance since 1810 had been the primary consideration of the emperor's regime, for he trusted implicitly the piety and honor of his father-in-law. "I hold him in profound esteem," were his very words. Having then such an idea of the family, he could hardly feel he had been deceived, or that in giving him his beloved daughter to wife, an emperor, and this emperor in particular, should have consciously endeavored to draw him into the abyss. Napoleon never doubted that Austria desired a general peace and claimed to intervene. He recognized this and indeed desired it. But the question was whether Austria was working in favor of France, and in her interest. He undoubtedly recognized Austria's claim to mediate in the ostensible dispatch from Metternich to the Austrian chargé d'affaires in Paris, December 9th, 1812. But he read the blood relations that unite the two imperial houses of Austria and France lend a particular character to all overtures made to our august master. The Emperor of the French appears to have anticipated what is to me that the marriage had changed the face of things in Europe, and Emperor Francis himself intervened to say, "The moment has come when I can prove to the Emperor of the French who I am." Yes, indeed. On December 30th, 1812, also on January 20th, 20th, 1813, he repeated his assurances, either personally or through his minister. This convinced Napoleon that the Emperor of Austria was playing his game, that the combinations were settled, and that his father-in-law could not abandon him without dishonoring and disgracing himself. What use would there be in disquieting his wife with the propositions made to the court of Austria by certain persons he had been acquainted with in Dresden and Prague? What was the good in telling her that her stepmother favors exclusively all the enemies of the existing system, and that her society is composed of the most ardent and most intrepid coalitionists? What was the good in revealing to her that Maria Ludovica, as also her brother Maximilian, had been initiated into a secret society called the Secte des Amis de la Liberté? Oh, the sect of the Friends of Liberty! Far better to keep up appearances by lavishing beautiful garments on the little religious woman at her stepdaughter's expense. The latter accepted in January 1830 1,024 francs worth of dresses from Leroy. In February 2000, 4,000 francs and 50 centimes worth of dresses. In March, 1,937 francs worth of dresses. In May, 743 francs worth. In June, 1,025 francs worth. Later on, there would be blood upon the garments. As to the Emperor of Austria, in each letter written to him by his daughter, she repeated the sentiments of his son-in-law. The Emperor Francis proclaimed his intention of being represented at the approaching coronation of the Empress by Prince Esterhazy, the most important man of his court, owing to his wealth and the extent of his possessions. At the same time, he would send Schwarzenberg to Paris to give Europe striking proof of the intentions of the court of Austria by causing the commandant of the auxiliary corps to make his appearance at the court of France so as to be near his chief and able to take orders from him.